right, testing everything out here. This is Parents Guide to the World. I'm just going to give it a minute here to see if anyone shows up. Bear with me for just a moment while I make sure everything is working. If you haven't joined us before, my name is Shay, and we've got a little hobby here called Parents Guide to the World. Our website is PGTTW.com, and we've been slowly working on that. We both had a lot of health issues, but we're parents. We've got some grown up kids and a younger kid. If you want to find out about my challenges, which make some of this video stuff a little bit more difficult, then please go ahead and check out our website again, pgttw.com, or our YouTube channel here. You'll find my story. It's pretty long. Apologize ahead of time, but I survived a brain tumor. So if I mess up anything during this video, I certainly apologize. It's going to be part of my whole kind of rehab to get back to doing what I can do. Um, it's it's a challenging thing, but it's a hobby that we started. I don't want to just give it up. I'm home right now, and so having an okay day today. So we figured we'll get this going. As I had mentioned before, I'm not going to be super consistent sometimes with these. I don't have a schedule yet with these. One, trying to figure out what the best schedule is, and two, I just can't really meet schedules. Some days I feel really bad, some days not so much. I planned on doing this yesterday, and by the time it got to that point, I was just exhausted. I just couldn't pull it off. So, just something to keep in mind is that I'm going to try to get these out weekly. There will be some weeks where I'm gone, I just won't be able to, or there will be some weeks where maybe I'll even get two out. So, just keep that in mind. But I do welcome you guys in. This is Parents Guide to the World. Once again, my name is Shay. And let's go ahead and get started on today's topic here, okay? So bear with me for just a quick second. I'm just pulling this all up here. Okay. All right. Now, today we are going to talk about a couple different topics, okay? So first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to welcome you guys all in. This is, like I said, this is Parents Guide to the World, parentsguideoftheworld.com or pgttw.com. My name is Shay, so I'll be your host today. Today we're going to go over a couple different things. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to tackle a topic that is near and dear to our hearts, and that's taking children to concerts. Kids of all ages, and we're going to talk a lot about that, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, how to keep your kids safer, and some lessons that you want to make sure you remember. It is getting into that concert season time. It's going to be nice to be able to be outdoors, listen to some different music out there, and festivals start kicking off. So if anyone does go to festivals or anything like that, then it's a great time to kind of get yourself informed and get ready for this spring and summer time for some for some concerts. But really, this works anytime because there's also a lot of indoor concerts. Now, the next thing we're going to cover, the next topic, is we're going to cover. It's a crucial topic, but you need to work on. Sounds kind of like scientific-y when you say it, which is to me weird. But emotional intelligence in children. So we're going to explain a little bit about that. What that is. It's way simpler than you think, but it's definitely important, especially this day and age. And then, of course, we're going to go ahead and give you our cringe corner. You're going to brave the depths of that. And so, first thing I want to do to get everybody warmed up is we like to go ahead and start with a trivia question here. So for this week, our trivia question is going to be, what famous musician is known for their iconic red electric guitar, affectionately named Lucille? One last time, what famous musician is known for their iconic red electric guitar, affectionately named Lucille? All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into concerts here. I wanted to talk about that with you guys. Oh, uh-oh. Copyright. Don't want to hit that copyright. All right. Let's not have that on volume. Hopefully that wasn't enough to have any issue there. But anyway, we've been to a few different concerts, and it's always a fun thing to be taking our kids to different concerts here. Started out, I don't know when I first took my son, but a long time ago, and he had a favorite band, so we made sure we bought tickets, and that was the first concert. It was definitely a really great experience, but it didn't come without its problems. It didn't come without its learning. And slowly we brought the kids to other concerts. And, you know, it's hard because you really need to have a lot of things considered when you go to a concert, and especially something like a rock festival or a rap concert. Um, and so we're going to go over some of these different things here. So I'm going to play this in the background here. So apologize if you're on audio, but we are just playing some just footage of some of the different concerts we've been to in the background, just for some visuals here. Um, but first thing I want to talk about is when you bring your kids to the concert, it can be, like I said, an amazing experience. It creates amazing memories, and definitely gives them some expansion of different kinds of music and encourages their love for music. But it also needs some like planning and excuse me, planning and preparation. Um, First thing to do is you need to consider what you're comfortable with your kids listening to and what you're comfortable bringing them to. This is a tough one because our personal opinion is once your kids are old enough to hear words from anywhere, then you need to be able to explain those words to them. So if there's going to be swears and songs and stuff, in my opinion, that's probably not great for little kids. But once your kid is able to understand some of that stuff, it is a form of art. And so just like I wouldn't stop somebody from seeing, a painting or a statue that has something that may be considered inappropriate, that is still art. And I think for us, we like to protect the artist's expression, and sometimes that comes with uncomfortable words, but sometimes art is uncomfortable. That's part of the point of it. So what we're looking at is, you need to kind of set some boundaries. What are you comfortable with your kids listening to? What are you comfortable taking them to, right? So there are some times where even I've made mistakes about thinking that I could bring the kids to something that maybe I shouldn't have. I apologize. I see some glare in my glasses here. And for instance, an all ages show is not always going to be an all ages show. Even if it's listed an all ages show, you need to consider the venue, right? And you need to make sure that you're prepared with some backup plans. Okay. So, like I said, considering what kind of show to take them to needs to be something you take some time to put into. You need to kind of judge what your kids are okay with, what you're okay with, and you need to make sure you're going to be able to talk to them. So that's one of the first things. And a good way to do that is if you don't know the band, go look up the band, go look up some videos about them. Gosh, this day and age, YouTube is full of live concerts that you can see, just little clips you can look at. Go look at their music, and if it seems like it's inappropriate, then maybe it is, right? And that is going to be a judgment call. Now, to get back real quick to music, keep in mind a lot of us grew up just listening to just the plain radio. I'm in my 40s, and I grew up with my kid. Excuse me, I grew up with my parents listening to songs playing right on the radio, like "Cocaine," right? By who is that? By Cocaine. Gosh. Anyway, I'm having a brain blank. It will come to me later. It's maybe it's Eric Clapton or something like that. But anyway, with songs like that playing on the radio, and nowadays, the songs that Nicki Minaj and some of these other people sing, some of the rappers, and even some of the rock artists, you get some stuff out there that I'm going to keep playing this in the background one more time here. You get some stuff out there that I would say is, borderline inappropriate for some people, right? So for really young kids, yeah, maybe you need to censor some of that. Maybe you need to take them to younger things. I don't know the specific band names that are all friendly, but there's plenty of like kid bands, that come out, kid bops, and all these different kinds of music and stuff like that. There's plenty of censored music out there, right? Once your kids are old enough, though, you decided on what kind of concert, you're okay to go. You kind of figured out what you're going to do. What you're going to do. You probably want to make sure that you're going to have a smaller concert for your first one. Maybe only an act or two. You don't want to necessarily be dragging them out to a festival, right? And so then the next thing is to kind of figure out what you need to bring. Now, every concert is going to have some different rules, right? So you're going to need to look up the venue and do some research. Not just you're going to have to worry about making sure you have parking and getting there. Some of them will let you in. Some of them will let you in early at a certain time. Some will let you in and then not let you out, right? Some of them you can go in and out. Some of them are going to have a bunch of different opening acts and stuff like that. So what you think might be a 1 hour, 2 hour concert could be a 5 hour concert by the time they add in 3 or 4 acts. Food is going to be expensive there. Drinks are going to be expensive there. Parking's going to be expensive there. Merch is going to be expensive there. It's pretty unlikely you're going to be able to count on making it a budget concert unless maybe you're going to see, one of your local bands in town, or they're having one of those free concerts outside. That does happen. So look for that kind of stuff. That's a good introduction into music because you're not tied into ticket prices or anything like that. Usually smaller acts, obviously, but you do get some good exposure to music that way. So you figured out you're going, and now you need to figure out what you can pack. Now we like to bring snacks and drinks, but a lot of places don't let you. So we at least put them in the car, or whatnot, where we can get to them. Now most places will at least let you bring a water bottle, and that's essential, right? Because they'll have some place you can fill it up, or maybe they'll charge you. I have been somewhere where like they let you bring in a water bottle, but if you didn't have one, they would sell you one that's unlimited refills. But if you didn't buy one, you had to pay for your refills. It was very kind of weird. But anyway, they do have a lot of stuff like that. Most of the time, they don't let food and snacks in. Every once in a while, they will. If you have something like medication, you need to make sure you bring that. A lot of venues won't allow big bags. They'll only allow like a tiny bag or a clear bag, see-through bag, something like that. Sometimes like a small fanny pack. Some venues will have lockers. Some will even have chargers. Some will have no kind of lockers, anything like that. And then, of course, you want comfortable and appropriate clothing. If you're outdoors and it's hot, you're probably okay in like shorts and a t-shirt. You might want some of that athletic clothing that's more water wicking, cotton, stuff like that might be a little much. And then if you think it's going to be cold, if you're in the desert, it gets cold at night, you might want to drag a hoodie out with you and stuff. If you think it's going to rain, you might want one of those cheap clear ponchos, something along those lines. So just keep that in mind. There's going to be some different things that you're going to when you want to consider when packing. If you're going somewhere where it's really cold, dress in wintry gear, obviously. So that kind of stuff can be really important because just because when you get there, it might be comfortable, doesn't mean when it's over, right? So, for instance, this concert we went to at Fenway, this was in the summer and it was really nice out and I was perfectly comfortable. But by the very end of the concert, we were starting to get to the point where it was getting, honestly, it was just getting kind of cold. And so basically, I wish I brought a hoodie, but I would have only worn it for the last like half an hour. But then the walk back to the car too. So keep in mind, you still have sometimes like a 30-minute walk back to your car in some of these situations. Now, I have been working on putting some of this stuff up on an article here. But one last thing I did want to, or not one last thing, one thing I did want to keep in mind here is when I said an all ages show, sometimes an all ages show is not an all ages show. So this show here, this is a Cypress Hill and Tech Nine show, and the difference here is this one's indoors and this is all fog, right? It's fog machines. There's no one smoking in here. This one is outdoors, and this wasn't fog. This was other stuff. And so, even though this show is an all ages show, if you wanted to bring people to this as an all ages show, you would need to probably, hang out quite a bit further back. Now, this one wasn't sold out or anything, so there was that option to be able to, get out of the way of all this. But yeah, the front of the stage, this was cloudy, to say the least, and it doesn't show it as much from this picture, but it definitely was. Now, no matter what concert you go to, this is probably for you as well as your kids. You can make your own choices about your ears, but your kids can't. You need to have some sort of ear protection. Earplugs are pretty cheap, but you don't want to buy them at the concert because they're going to cost way more. Get them ahead of time, make sure you have them, and I would even have a backup pair, right? Don't necessarily go buy like the most expensive pair and only bring one. It'd be better to have two or three pairs of cheap ones in case you drop them, or lose them somewhere in the middle of the concert. What good's the protection if you have none of it? But we get usually like we have like a mid range pair that we tend to use, and then I just throw a pack of the really cheap ones in my bag too in case anyone loses them. That way we've got like total of 6 pairs or something between the three of us. So that's something to keep in mind too, especially with young children, and especially depends on the venue, right? Just because it's outdoors does not mean it's going to be quiet. Like that one, that Cypress Hill Tech 9 one, that was outdoors in Vegas, and my gosh, it was one of the loudest concerts I've ever been to. There was so much bass there that my entire body was like pulsating. It was very intense. It was a good concert, but man, it was a lot. And I've been to indoor ones with huge, massive sound systems that I thought were like some of the loudest I've been to. That might have been the loudest concert I've ever been to, and it was outdoors. All right. Now another important one is to manage expectations. So we went to this, this BB No Money Young Gravy concert where there's some different pictures out here, and this was in a smaller venue. We did get cheaper seats, so you can't really complain too much. We drove down there though, and then we happened to have the tallest people in front of us. Um, and then not just that, if they sat, we'd be fine. It was tiered seating, but they stood most of the time. And so, it's hard because you didn't pay for great seating. Now, people standing, that's going to happen anywhere. So you couldn't really get mad at them. But other times you might find a really cheap seat that has like an obstructed view. There's a lot of situations like that. Now, if you're at a bigger venue, it's not quite as big of a deal because you can usually see, and every once in a while you can go walk around and get different views. When you're in a tight one, like this one was in Boston here for BB No Money and Young Gravy, they're pretty strict about you walking into the aisles unless you're actually getting food and drink and stuff. They don't want you just hanging out there. They were getting on people for standing in weird spots. So this one was definitely a harder one. And this was actually, one of the ones that we debated a little bit between taking our child to, because she's a little young for it, but she's been listening to the music anyway, and she was listening to it with her friends. They play it in advertisements. It's all over the place. And so when you have someone like this, it's very mainstream, BB No Money, Young Gravy. But then when you listen to lyrics, obviously, there's some stuff there. It's not just all goofiness and everything. They have some substance, but they also have some inappropriate stuff. They're very sexualized, and so you need to know that stuff. And that's why it's really important to discuss this stuff with your children. Discuss their favorite parts. Discuss the parts they were uncomfortable with. Discuss, how they felt after it. Did they enjoy it? Are they into this kind of music still? If there are swears, especially in rap or even some of the rock stuff, talk to them about that. Don't just leave it out there and ignore it, because you don't know what they're going to think of it, right? And you know, sometimes some of these bands are very extreme about the way they act or the way their lyrics are and stuff, right? So then you have some that are kind of chill and seem pretty chill, but then when you listen to the lyrics, then sometimes you get, wow, these guys are pretty deep about what their messages are. We got Green Day, and like I said, my sister and my wife and I went to see that concert, and these are a lot of fun, but you can't just go and think that you can bring your kid to anything just because it says it's all ages. And then some of the other things are just safety. So you want to make sure one of the first things you do when you get there is figure out an emergency point that looks like it's a good spot. Usually there's going to be one where kids can go if they're lost. So usually you want to make sure it's like that main office central area, that if anyone gets lost, no matter what, you go back there. You want to make sure you establish where the closest bathroom is, so that if anyone is getting lost, we know where that is, in case anyone needs to wait out there, and you don't run to the emergency spot, and leave somebody behind. You also want to make sure that you're aware of the kind of music that's playing, as well as the kind of crowds around you. It's hard to have to sit there and be vigilant of everybody around you. But if you see a mosh pit forming, you can't have your kid near that. And if you do, you know, that's going to be pretty dangerous if anyone gets in there. Now, I'm not going to say that hard rock people are bad people, because honestly, if you're going to have somebody if you were going to have your kid need to run to somebody, sometimes it might be almost better to have them run to somebody who, is hard rock like that, bikers, stuff like that. They're not usually the ones who are the super creepy ones you need to look out for, but that doesn't mean you want them running anywhere near their mosh pit. Some of these mosh pits are very violent. Kids get hurt all the time. Even if your kid wants to say that he's going to go in a mosh pit, you don't want to let them anywhere near there. Once they're 18, I still wouldn't recommend it. You can do what you want at that point. It's hard for a parent to stop a kid at 18, and you might encourage them if you tell them not to. But if they're under 18, keep them away from the mosh pit and protect them. That's your job as a parent. You might end up getting hurt accidentally doing it, but that's better than your kid getting hurt, right? It's just definitely one of those things that you're going to find bands encourage it, and some bands don't. And I totally get it for some people. They get so hard into it. They love it. They love the whole fighting thing. MMA people just charging at each other, just dancing the music and throwing their fists. There's bands that are like that though. You know, you're not gonna see that at a Goo Goo Dolls concert necessarily, but if you go to something like Power Man 5000, that's gonna be there, right? So look at your crowds, be aware. I wouldn't recommend crowd surfing either, especially with you and your kids. Might be borderline illegal. They could get dropped and stuff like that. So, once again, those types of things, I would highly recommend you kind of stay out of the pit, stay away from the front couple rows. I would recommend with kids you try to get seating if possible. Sometimes you're going to be out on a lawn, so you might not have a choice. So, at that point, hang back a little bit, find out where the edge of that crowd is, and stay away from the people who look like they're going to cause trouble. If you see other families, try to stick together with your other families and your kids and stuff. That way, you kind of create a group that is more cohesive to everyone involved. You get more like minded people, and you're less likely to have a bunch of people moshing around a bunch of kids because they're not going to want to mosh around kids, too. Last thing they want to do is hurt somebody other than somebody else moshing. All right, so let me just double check, make sure I didn't miss anything here, because I've always thought the whole concert thing was a pretty fun thing. And like I said, we do have our quick article here. Rock on, our family's fun to taking kids to concerts. That's right on our website for parentsguidetotheworld.com. And just put some pictures of some different concerts we've been to. There's Smashing Pumpkins, Green Day, Rancid, Tech Nine, goodness, we saw a bunch of different ones. BB No Money, Young Gravy, and we're gonna go to another one, and we'll probably have an update on that one. That's gonna be an actual festival, a rock festival. We'll have an update on that probably at the end of May. So it's a ways from now. If you if you do end up wanting to see an update of that about that, definitely like and subscribe, and I will be adding that once we get it. So that's definitely an awesome one as well. All right, now let's go ahead and give you guys the answer to the trivia question real quick. Um, let's see. So, all right. So the trivia question, once again, was this musician is known for his iconic red electric guitar, Lucille. All right. Once again, this musician is known for his iconic red electric guitar, Lucille. Who is it? It's BB King. All right. So that was our trivia question for this week. So if you got that in the comments and everything, awesome. If you didn't, well, it's all right. Now you know a different useless fact, and that is something that I always encourage. Okay. We're going to switch topics here. So our second topic today will be about raising emotionally intelligent children. Our family's guide to building emotional intelligence here, EQ. All right. So with this segment, sorry, let's see here. So with this segment, we are going to go ahead and talk about some vital parenting skills, emotional intelligence, or building emotional intelligence, or EQ in children, as it's called, is definitely an important thing. It sounds like I don't like the phrasing for it, to be honest. It's basically just making sure you raise well-rounded kids that are self-aware, self-regulate, which is a big part of it because kids don't very well, have motivation, empathy, and social skills. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. After having my brain tumor, some of this stuff is hard for me as well. I have a very much a lack of self-awareness, kind of like I did when I was a child. Now that I've had this tumor removed, and I have some trouble with self-regulation, motivation, and some of my other stuff like social skills. Empathy, I'm pretty good at. So as I've had to work on, or as we've tried to work on this with the kids, more of it has come to light that I can use some of this information for myself. So some of it seems very basic, but it's always something to look into. You are the role model for your children. So if you don't have this stuff handled, then you need to make sure that your children do. So with this one, well, no, sorry, you need to make sure you got a hand. Brain's blanking here. I'm having a little mix up. Sorry. You want to make sure you have your, emotional intelligence handled so that your kids are also going to look up to you and have theirs. So this is an important one for you to look at. If you've got it all, then by all means, you're good to go. And these are just our opinions and some helpful hints on how to make this slightly easier for you, and just some things we found that worked with our kids. These aren't things that are always going to work with every kid, but if you've tried everything, it's worth a try for these. So we did throw up another quick article here, and so let's just real quick define it. So, what is emotional intelligence? So, emotional intelligence um, is basically some stuff that some of the singers and whatnot have told us about. Peter Slovey and John Mayer here tell us is about understanding, using, and managing emotions. But for our family, it's about being able to recognize our own feelings, understanding what others are going through, and knowing how to deal with it in a positive way. Okay. So those are simple. It's a lot of it is treating others how you want to be treated, and just trying to go ahead and spin everything positive. It's really hard to do. Don't get me wrong. That part is something that I've been working on my whole life and have definitely never mastered. And then, like I said, mastering your own feelings, being aware of your own feelings, being able to recognize them. That's a lot easier said than done. And like I said, after my injuries, it's been even worse. So this is the kind of thing that people, we get angry, we have road rage. Like, let's be honest, as adults, if it's our best to try to teach our kids to learn from our mistakes and also learn as well. So each kid is obviously going to be different. This is going to be kind of a theme that you find in a lot of situations is you need to kind of know what your kids' levels are. And this is why this stuff's important to talk to them about, because if you don't talk to them, you're going to have no clue. So when I say age appropriate strategies, you definitely want to employ those. Something that, makes sense. You're not going to talk to, uh, a teenager the same way you're going to talk to a little kid, right? You want to make sure that you're walking in their shoes, and basically trying to kind of see what they go through. But depending on the age, obviously that's going to be a lot different. And a younger kid may tell you a very simple version of it. But like an older kid is going to go ahead and probably hide things a lot different, but also be able to articulate and give you a lot more to go off of if they are able to, if they do describe it properly. Um, and so this is a tough one because the easiest way for like a kid is probably to engage in like a game, something where you have little poke and prods about feelings, kind of asking them even directly. They'll usually give you an answer, unless they're really upset, but they're also gonna flip on a dime, right? They're gonna go to a tantrum. They're gonna get mad. They're gonna be hungry or thirsty, and a lot of their like raw needs are going to power their emotions. They don't know what to do other than basically cry for something. So that's something that starts early on. You want to make sure that you're talking to them about expressing their feelings, not just going into wham mad, like our id, if you will, right? I'm not a psychologist, but our monkey brains, our id, that fight or flight brains and all that stuff, that controls a lot of that basic emotions. And if you don't learn anything, then that's pretty much where you're going to go ahead and default to. Okay, so yeah, like we like reading books about feelings, role playing. Like we don't like to do the cheesy role playing, but we'll kind of come up with a scenario, and we might be like, oh my goodness, if that was doing that, how would you react to that, or what did that make you feel like, or wow, that really is horrible how that person was treated. What would you have done in that situation? So we try to kind of go with different situations that are like role playing, but not necessarily completely role playing. All right, now let's check one last thing here. Okay. Appreciate your patience while I was just double checking that. All right, and then let's see. All right, then this one is important. So we do like to read books, and we try to read them together, especially if there's something that's kind of, the right level for them. Once they're older, I think reading them themselves is probably important, but it's not a bad idea to maybe parallel read with them, so you can talk about them. Um, and so the other one is create a safe emotional space. So this means a space where you can validate your child's feelings, listen without judgment, provide a supporting environment, and where they can feel comfortable expressing their feelings. So this is fundamental for building trust and emotional security. So if you are constantly not letting your kids express those feelings, they're going to repress them. I think a lot of you probably that are my age probably remember that most of us weren't allowed to have feelings. And I'm not saying that it means make us whiny and create all these other issues like that, but it is important to talk about them. If a kid is getting angry, says he's angry all the time, or you see him angry all the time, but never talks about it, then that is never going to get solved. Think about how we have to solve it as adults. You know, people go to anger management because they need to go and learn how to not get angry all the time. That's probably something that was unfortunately lacking in their childhood. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be the case. You just want to set your kids up for the best advantage they can have, right? So these are the kind of things that even if you didn't do any of it before, just the conversation every week or two is going to be way more, right? So we try to talk about them usually daily, but we don't always, I guess. But then something like a weekend day, we might go over a lot of this stuff, or we might kind of dedicate like an hour to to actually do it. We don't tell the kids that, but we'll, say, let's kind of make sure we spend an hour really getting into if anything happened this week and talk about feelings. We'll look up some new strategies here and there. Not a bad idea, do some research ourselves. And so then giving them that space. Now that means giving them a space where they're comfortable and open to talk about stuff, and then trying not to be judgmental. That's kind of hard. There's some things that they'll tell you. You don't want to always be mad at them for something they're telling you, because otherwise they might not tell you. But you also need to make sure you understand it, and you need to make sure that you are setting some limits, right? They can't be like, oh, I was out doing this or that, and I hate myself and hate everyone around me and blah blah blah, and then you just ignore it. Like, that's not going to work for you. So make sure you're discussing this stuff with them, and if you're also getting mad at them or punishing them for it, then they won't want to tell you about it anymore, right? So they're going to start hiding their feelings and everything. And then when I say a safe space, that includes people, but also like a safe space for them to escape to if they need to. Make sure the room is their sanctuary. If they have to share a room with somebody else, make sure you have a place that they can go to get alone. At least have headphones so they can be alone in their own space. But it is important, I think, for everyone to be able to at least have some spot that they can go and not be disturbed. Now, it also needs to be somewhere where you can check in on with them. If they're really depressed, we know that sometimes that gets really bad, and we do not want to see anyone do something harmful to themselves, right? That's the last thing we want to do. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the main reasons of all this, is to prevent that in the future, or forever happening, because the last thing anyone wants is a loss of a child, especially before themselves. And at the same inverse of that, nobody wants a loss of a parent either. I've been down, I've thought I wasn't going to make it. And like, there's times where it gets hard, and some of this stuff's really important for both kids and parents here. All right. What else here? Excuse me. All right. So, we kind of touched on this, but make sure you're teaching healthy coping mechanisms for anger, sadness, anxiety, and frustration. A lot of these are easier said than done. It's best to kind of research them and try them. For instance, for anger or anxiety, breathing exercises can work pretty well, but I'm not going to pretend to think that sadness is great for breathing exercises. I think, sadness is one of those ones that you either kind of need to handle a lot of the time on your own and then talk about it after, right? So you get through your sadness, or it's the kind of thing that, and this depends on each person, everyone's going to be different. Um, or depending on the sadness, you may want someone around or to hug, or even just to be next to you but not say anything. There's so many different levels of these different emotions. You kind of need to find what works for you and what works for your kids. Just because something works for you, also keep in mind it's not going to work for your kids. Going and screaming into a pillow for a lot of people, cool, perfectly fine. Easy way to handle anxiety, frustration, anger, a lot of that stuff all at once, even the anger that would come with the sadness. But that doesn't mean that's what you want your kid always doing, or that's going to work for your kid. Maybe breathing exercises work for them instead. So keep that in mind, that you want to approach this a few different ways. Um, and then, of course, have your child, or help your child to understand their feelings. Discuss it with your children. Like I said, emotions in movies and stories, encourage their perspectives. Now, obviously, with animated stuff, you get a little bit of mixed reality because their eyes are so big. But because of that, it tends to express emotion in a much more friendly, approachable way, I guess, right? So it is harsh a lot of the ways that that Disney makes some of these movies, but also they are a good way to talk about some of the stuff with your kids without actually getting them into real world, actual graphic people having these issues. So it's a weird thing to think about, but talk about the sadness that comes with the loss of Nemo's mom there. It's going to be better than having the same thing happen in a real life movie and then having them transition that way. Now, also don't let them think that all that is okay either. Like, loss is important. If you notice that your child is all of a sudden not taking loss seriously, that's something that you need to address a little bit differently, right? So, we all think, oh, yeah, every Disney character's parents die. We kind of take it for granted as parents, but if when you were a kid, that was probably pretty traumatic to you. If nobody ever addressed it with you, I think it would have kind of stuck with you. Like, even when I wasn't even a kid, and Lion King came out, and man, that one's a tough one. Mufasa, man. Um, all right, so I think that's kind of it. Like I said, we've got that article right on PGTTW.com about building emotional intelligence. It's a lot of the same stuff we just went over, but that will be up there, and we may change some of that stuff around. We just kind of put that up there. And so the last topic we're going to go into is essentially the same one we did last week, and we're going to try to throw these into each of our podcasts here. And after finishing up emotional intelligence, we're going to go ahead and go to, uh, oh, sorry, we're going to go ahead and start with our cringe corner. Now, cringe corner last week, we did our dad jokes, and we also talked about our cracking the code, a parent's ultimate guide to Gen Z slang. So we've got this on the site, pgttw.com. And like I said, we went over this last week. I'm going to go ahead and update this list and put in more stuff as we go through. Um, so bear with me as I go in there and put some more stuff on there. But this week, what I wanted to do is essentially kind of expand that same one. So we talked about a few different things with it last week. This week, we want to go over the definitions of a couple more. So on Cringe Corner this week, first thing is our two dad jokes. So the first dad joke of Cringe Corner to tell your kids and make them really cringe at you is, why don't eggs tell jokes? Anybody? If you have comments, leave them in the comments. And then once again, why don't eggs tell jokes? The answer is they'd crack each other up. And then the next one is, what musical instrument is found in the bathroom? Once again, what musical instrument is found in the bathroom? A tuba toothpaste. I know, they're so cheesy, but I love them. And when you tell them around your kids, it makes them cringe, but that's kind of the point. All right, now the next Gen Z slang we wanted to get into this week is, like I said last week, we went through a few, but we want to talk about what ghosted is. Ghosted is someone suddenly stopping communication. You probably knew that one. You probably heard that one before, but they use that a lot. And it's not just online or whatnot. They will be in person too, or somebody doesn't show up to a meeting, or well, for us, meeting, for them, a play date or recess or lunch or something like that. Or somebody doesn't do something they said, they kind of use it that way too. So if they were going to bring them something, they'll be like, they ghosted me on that. It's a little less common, but in general, like, they might still see the person. But if the person like ignored them about what their promise was previously, that's still kind of ghosting. So that was one for this week, ghosted. And then Sigma. Sigma is a lone wolf, an independent, or an otherwise mysterious individually. It's not always a male, but a lot of the time it is. So you could think of basically, somebody who's kind of like a rogue or a vagabond would be a sigma, or just somebody who's like, yeah, like I said, mysterious, or somebody who's really just like that individual who stands out, but not necessarily what they would consider to be an alpha. All right. And then Skibbity. This is one of everyone's favorites that nobody knows until they look it up. But Skibbity is often associated with Skibbity toilet, as you've probably seen at like Walmart, that weird thing, that meme. But what Skibbity means is that it's something usually nonsense. Oh my goodness. Skibbity usually means something nonsensical, silly, or chaotic. So it's like a ridiculous word. I guess literally ridiculous would be pretty close to what Skibbity would be. And you'll also see Skibbity Ohio, but Ohio has its own meaning until you put the two together. But Ohio is used as something strange, bizarre, or out of the ordinary, often in a humorous way, related to an online meme of strange things happening in Ohio. It does seem to have, like Ohio by itself, seems to have a much more negative tone with it and kind of a negative thing. Um, Lately, it seems like a lot of people have kind of leaned it towards that bizarre stuff being when it's something kind of negative bizarre. And then Skibbity Ohio would be when it's completely weird, bizarre, and then it's kind of gross. So, like, Skibbity Ohio would be bad. Skibbity by itself isn't necessarily bad. Ohio necessarily isn't bad, but it leans towards bad. But it's the way they say these in context, right? So, some of the stuff, um, just like other English language words, even though these are kind of made up, is still stuff that does have context depending on what they're saying it with, right? So even bussin', like we talked about last week, that's usually about food, but there's times where service might be bussin' even if it wasn't technically food. So there's some weird ones like that. The next one is unlike sigma, alpha, and alpha is a dominant or assertive individual, often used to describe a leader or someone with a strong personality. So your typical football quarterback would probably be an alpha when we were kids and stuff like that, or the class president might be just basically the one who stands out in front of everyone else, or acts like a leader. Sometimes it can be somebody who you might not even think, and then they're put in that leadership role, and they become at least the alpha of that era, right? So just because somebody's an alpha one day doesn't mean they always are, and just because somebody is not an alpha doesn't mean that they won't categorize them as that was alpha, right? So it could even be, it's not just always a person. It could be kind of like an action or an individual thing that somebody did that day made them an alpha for that day, and then by the next day they're not again, because these kids are all over the place. Bet, they say that it's an affirmation, agreement, or challenge. So if somebody's like, I'm going to do this, they'll be like, bet. And that's basically like them calling somebody's bluff, essentially, is essentially what that is, right? So that actually kind of makes sense for people who are probably poker players. It probably came from that. And then I want you guys to remember that making this stuff cringy is one of the best ways to make your kids not like it, make it uncool. If you use it all the time, and then also you're going to understand it better. So they're not going to be able to use this language around you without you knowing what they're saying. Because if they're sitting there like, oh, bets, give me Ohio, Sigma, whatever, like, you don't understand them. Trust me, it's crazy. And like, even now, I tell you this stuff and I still have to think about it, because they change it all the time. Okay, so then let's see. So one of our sentences this week was, that Skibbity concert was so alpha, but then my friend ghosted me. Bet you didn't see that coming. And then if the other guy was like, bet I totally saw that coming, right? So it'd be a bunch of weird things like that. But anyway, that wraps up this week's segment. So first we went through appropriate places and ways to bring your children to concerts, right? So your children to concerts, um, right? We're going to go to a rock one here pretty soon, but that was definitely awesome. I got some good tips in there for you guys there, as well as that article on PGTTW.com. And then we went into raising emotionally intelligent children, our family's guide to building EQ. And then went back into our Gen Z slang and our cringe corner. So I do thank you guys for joining us. This is going to be something, like I said, I survived a tumor, so this is tough for me to do. I don't have any way to sit and edit this stuff without taking forever, so that's why I'm trying to do this all live. I will continue to try to do these once every week to 2 weeks at the most, and try to do even sometimes 2 week if I can. They're only going to get better from here, so I do appreciate it if you please like and subscribe. I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, keep pumping these out while I can. Somewhere between half an hour to an hour is my goal with each of these each week. And my name is Shay. Check out PGTTW.com. And thanks again for joining me. I appreciate it, guys. All right. Another one wrapped up. And we've got this one. I'm going to go ahead and kill the live stream. Have a great night, everyone.